Hello and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we'll review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Yevamot, pages 6 through 12. Daf Vav. Shabbat chovat hagufi, v'chovat haguf nohed bein ba'aretz bein b'chutz ala aretz. So the topic under discussion is the Shabbat, and the idea here is that the Shabbat is incumbent upon the body of the person. It's not extrinsic to the person. So therefore, it is a mitzvah which is applicable in the land of Israel, ba'aretz, and everywhere else in the diaspora. There's nowhere in the world where it doesn't apply. Rather, the Torah says, "B'chol moshvotechem," in all of your dwelling places, wherever they may be. As Rashi tells us, this mitzvah of Shabbat is not dependent upon the karka, the land of Israel, the soil, the agriculture. It's dissimilar to kilayim, forbidden admixtures of the field, or Allah, the forbidden fruit of the first 3 years of a tree, shumot u'masrot, and Levitical tithes, and priestly emoluments, in that those mitzvot really are dependent by karka on the land. Shabbat is different, it applies everywhere. Dav Zayin. Mitzorah shechal shmini shelo be'erev Pesach. What happens if a mitzorah, a leper, has the 8th day of his purification process fall out on the 14th of Nisan, on erev Pesach, the day when we have to bring the paschal sacrifice? V'ra keri bo bayom, and he saw a seminal emission that day. V'taval, and he went to the mikveh. So ordinarily, a Tavul Yom, a person who went to mikveh that day, does not go to Har HaBayit. However, the sages will make an exception in this particular case. Amru Chachamim, Afal Pi Shen Tavul Yom Acher Nichnas, even though any other Tavul Yom would not be allowed to enter onto the Temple Mount, the Har HaBayit, on such a circumstance, this one will be allowed to. Why? Mutav Shevo Aseh Yishbol Karet, so it's better that a mitzvah aseh, a performative commandment, which is associated with the karet penalty, namely the paschal lamb, should come and override idacheh aseh shein bo karet, a positive commandment which has no karet penalty associated with it, namely that a tevul yom not go on har habayit. There only is a karet penalty if a person who was tamei, even residual tamei, goes in the azara itself. But this tevul yom does not need to go into the azara. He just needs to stick certain body parts through the gate of Nicanor to purify himself, and then he'll be totally in the clear and be allowed to do his paschal sacrifice. Davchet. Ulekacha, and he shall take her. This teaches us that a Yavam who marries his Yavama in a mitzvah of Yibum, of levirate marriage, is now fully married to this woman, and he's allowed to divorce her, and if he divorces her, it has to be by way of the ordinary method of divorce, not chalitza, but rather a get, a written divorce document. And if he would like to remarry her, he's allowed to. Machazira, he can remarry her, and we don't concern ourselves with the prohibition of marrying your brother's wife, because it's no longer regarded as his brother's wife. Rather, she is his ex-wife. And so remarrying your ex-wife is permitted as long as she didn't get married in between. Okay. Daftet. Kol mitzvah shebatorah, all the commandments of the Torah, shecheven al zdona karet, for which a deliberate violation results in a karet penalty, and for an inadvertent violation has a sin offering associated with it. Well, what happens to the various types of people who are obligated to bring such a korban? What do they bring? Yachid, an individual, mevi kispa sira. So an individual for his chatat will bring a female animal, a female keves or a female sa'ir, a sheep or goat. However, nasi mevi sa'ir, the president, the patriarch, the leader of the country, will bring a male sa'ir. Mashiach u'beit din, however, the anointed priest or the high court who makes such a mistake, mevi par, they bring a bull. When it comes to the sin of idolatry, the offerings are a bit different. Yachid nasi mashiach mevi seira, the individual, the nasi, the anointed priest, they all bring a female sa'ir. Tzibur, however, the congregation at large, mevi par v'sa'ir, they bring a bull and a male sa'ir. Parla ola, the bull is for the burnt offering, and sa'ir is for the chatat, is for the sin offering. Daf Yud. Hacholitz liyavimto, v'chazo v'kidsha. What happens if you give chalitza to your yavama, instead of doing the mitzvah of yibum, and then you go ahead and marry her with regular kiddushin? So this is a very bizarre situation. If the yavam wanted to marry the yavama, he should have just done the regular mitzvah of yibum, but he didn't do that. He gave her chalitza, and then sometime later decided, oh, I want to marry this girl, and they got married. Well, that's against the rules. So the question is, what's the punishment? Amar Reish Lakish, hu ein chayav al chalutza karet, ve'achin chayavin al kutza karet. He, the one who did the kiddushin and the chalitza, is not liable for this union with the karet penalty, the penalty for being married to one's brother's wife, but the other brothers would be liable for karet, because they did not do the chalitza. However, Rabbi Yochanan says, "Bein hu bein achina ein chayav l'chet chalitza karet." It doesn't matter whether it's he who did the chalitza or any other brother who did the chalitza. None of the brothers would be liable for a karet penalty if they were to be with this woman subsequently. Daf Yud Aleph. Hamachzir grushato misheniset tzarata mahu. What happens if a man were to remarry his ex-wife after she had been married to someone else in between? Well, the Torah explicitly prohibits that. So it's a forbidden union. And now they got married illicitly, and he died, and they didn't have any children. And she's a Yavama, potentially, and there's an available Yavam. There's also a co-wife. So what's the rule about the co-wife performing Yibum with the brother of the deceased? So the Gemara says, well, you should ask about this woman herself. Forget the co-wife. What's the story with this woman doing Yibum with the brother? Well, we have no question about her status. There's a Kal V'chomer argument in play. If she was really forbidden to be married to the man who was permitted to her initially, namely the original husband, then all the more so she should be forbidden to someone who was otherwise forbidden to her, namely her husband's brother. So there should be no possibility of Yibum done with this woman who was engaged in an illicit relationship before the first husband died. The only question is about the co-wife. Does the argument of Kal V'chomer, which applied to the original wife, satisfy the interest of the tzara, of the co-wife, in exempting her from the mitzvah of Yibum or not? And the answer to that, the Gemara addresses and offers multiple opinions. But the argument is, well, maybe the fact that the co-wife did something wrong is not good enough to eliminate the tzara from any possibility of Yibum. Maybe it is. Daf Yud Bet. Amar Avasi, Tzarat Ailanit Asura. The co-wife of an Ailanit. An Ailanit is a woman who is not very feminine and had masculine voice and was unable to bear children, and the marriage is not really much of a marriage. So the co-wife of an Ailanit is not allowed to do Yibum. Why? It says that the firstborn which will be born from the union of the Yibum marriage shall be named after the deceased husband, first husband. But this woman can't give birth. So because she can't give birth, the whole concept of the Torah is not in play, it's moot. And therefore her tzara, her co-wife, also is exempt from Yibum. Everyone have a great week.